President Joseph Kabila gathered his ministers and party officials at his farm in Kangati in the Democratic Republic of Congo at the start of the presidential campaign. Kabila has ruled since his father's assassination in 2001. He agreed last August not to defy term limits by running for re-election, opening the door to the Central African nation's first democratic transfer of power. His announcement calmed tensions that have seen dozens of anti-Kabila demonstrators killed by security forces since he refused to step down when his constitutional mandate expired in December 2016. Kabila is backing Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary in the long-delayed election on December 23rd. He is standing as the candidate of the Common Force for Congo, FCC, a coalition of ruling parties.
We are in fighting spirit. We are going into this campaign with a calm spirit, but we are also going before the people. And as we are presenting ourselves to the people, we need to show a lot of humility. And so there is humility. If there are problems, we need to discuss them openly, but without any contrition, because we have improved governance for the people of this country throughout the last 17 years.
His biggest challenges are likely to be Felix Tshisekedi, the president of Congo's largest opposition party, and Vital Kamerhe, who placed third in the last election in 2011. Both Tshisekedi and Kamerhe pulled out of a deal to present the joint opposition candidate, Martin Fayulu.
No, I don't think he's a serious contender. In a city like Kinshasa, he only managed to get a few thousand people, between 3,000 to 5,000.
Thousands of supporters greeted Fayulu on his return to Kinshasa on Wednesday after signing the coalition deal in Geneva.
Now, for more on that story, we speak to researcher at Unisa's Institute for Dispute Resolution in Africa, Advocate Sipho Mantula, from our parliamentary studios in Cape Town. Advocate, a very good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Of course, after some massive delays, do you think we will actually get to see this election finally going ahead on December the 23rd?
Evening, my sister, and to the viewers. I think yesterday when we were having the seminar, what we looked around, it was the state of readiness from the Electoral Commission. We looked at the question of Kabila being outside but still on the side of his proxy. Yes, elections will be held on the 23rd, but there are some challenges which I can say to you. One of them are around the rainy season. Remember that in Congo, between now and the next month, it will be the rainy season. The issue of the voting tools, the machine that has been questioned. Yes. The question around voters' roll, that we have a number that have grown since the 2011 elections, meaning we are talking about 40 million voters. So one can say yes, but SADC and AU, they are playing a very silent role.
I want to talk about, we'll get back to the role of SADC and the African Union there, but at this stage, at what level is there a fear of violence pre and post this election? I mean, holding elections, for example, in Eastern Congo and Kasai, which are particularly violent at the moment, will also be extremely difficult.
Correctly. One of the fears, it is around external role players. What is the role of Jean-Pierre Bemba? What is the role of Moise Katumbi in this matter? And again, the issue of the health hazard, the issue of Ebola. There is the question that it seems that we are not looking at the health hazard, we are not looking at the issue of climate, we are not even looking at the role of opposition parties, which are actually divided with their joint candidate, which was nominated in Europe, not in Africa. Remember those meetings were in Gauteng, they moved to Brussels and they moved to Geneva. So one is a bit skeptical around that. But again, the role of the United Nations peacekeeping mission has been endorsed by the United Nations Security Council that there is a need to allow the UN peacekeeping mission to play that role of peacekeeping during elections, because I think that the role of the police and the military in Congo, it is biased.
You were speaking about the issue, you just touched on very briefly, the issue of the spread of the Ebola virus. If restrictions imposed by the spread of the Ebola virus are factored in, would that also not add to the logistical difficulties involved in rolling out the election itself?
Definitely it will, but it will again deny that right to vote of the ordinary people in Beni, in the northern part. But again, when you look at the role of the UN, the role of SADC and AU, are they not looking at this health hazard as the threat to the region and to the electorate? So one can say that these are the challenges facing DRC Congo towards the 23rd of December.
Advocate Mantula, just before we wrap up there, of course, let's take a look at the two presidential frontrunners, Martin Fayulu, who will stand against Emmanuel Ramazani Shadare, who's seen as a hardliner backed by Kabila.
I think Shadara comes in at the wrong time because he's not popular. He's been under the EU sanctions. Fayula as well, he's a very different guy who comes from the business community, and Tshisekedi has been left out, and that is why we have this tension. And finally, my sister, we have an elder, Anthony Gisenga, at the age of 80, who is even part of that presidential candidate. Women, I cannot talk about the role of women in that country. There are very few presidential candidates of women in that country.
Why do you think we still see that? I see I'm being given a bit more time here on this interview, Advocate. The role of women, on the African continent, in prominent positions of even rising to power to become president of countries. Yes, we've seen the likes of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in Liberia, but many more examples, I guess, of course, can be made to even say that Africa has made the necessary strides in advocating for women.
That is quite true. I thought they will have learned a lesson from Rwanda with many members of a parliament being women, Ethiopia having the president. And then I think in our neighboring country, West Africa, they're having a presidential candidate next year in those elections. Congo, I can say to my sister, there is lack of political institutionalization. There is no institutions in Congo. It is anarchy, it is patriarchy, it is even looting. So you have this challenge in the DRC Congo of not allowing the role of women to be involved, even the young people, because I think it's a vast country with many young people who are the instigators of this violence. I cannot vouch for the parties who are even part of this election, but the young people in that country who don't have jobs, who are being used as the child soldiers. Those are the young people who are going to be the triggers of the post-electoral conflict in that country.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Advocate Sipho Mantula from Unisa's Institute for Dispute Resolution in Africa, talking to us about the upcoming elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the National Assembly